So my name is Laura O'Connor. I'm CFMA's Membership Director. I want to thank you for joining us today for our June Member Benefits Series Zoom meeting, where you'll learn more about one of CFMA's newest affinity partners, JobSiteCare, which is a workplace injury management company. The program can reduce your workers' comp spend, lower OSHA metrics, and return workers back to the site faster than traditional programs. Plus, CFMA members receive special pricing. So with us today from JobSiteCare, we have Senior Vice President Mike Russo. If you have questions throughout Mike's presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, or he said it's all right to go ahead and interrupt him and he can address them then. Now I'll turn it over to Mike. Mike?
Thanks, Laura. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your busy Monday. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Morgan Payne, who's on the call as well, and she works with me on the business development side. I oversee all non-clinical operations for JobSiteCare. And so with that, I'm going to jump right in. We've been a proud member of CFMA for the last couple of years, sponsoring the national conference and attending some regional events as well. We are first and foremost a medical practice. And so we are licensed to practice medicine in all 50 states. And I'm going to just kind of walk through quickly what we do and how we do it. But as Laura mentioned, please don't let this be just a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation. Stop me, raise your hand, blurt it out, or put it in the chat. And I'd love to have your questions and address them as we move along. So with that, so as I mentioned, we're a work comp practice, medical practice, and we focus 100% on injured workers within our medical practice. And we are telemedicine based. And so if you think of us as having two line items, just to kind of set the stage here for us, we can do telemedicine standalone, but we also have the ability to put a physical person or a site medic on a job site. And that site medic is always paired with our telemedicine solution. I suspect many of you in your construction ethos are familiar with the idea of a site medic, but we add on to that the idea of telemedicine and tapping into physicians right away for any injury, so getting the highest level of care. And we grew up in this space about 5 years ago. Our founder, Dr. Dan Carlin, is a retired naval doctor. For 25 years, he ran a concierge medical practice for high net worth individuals. And about 5 years ago, one of his wealthy clients who owned a construction company said, "Hey, do you think you could help us with work comp?" And so he was a little unsure about what they meant by that. And so as he did his research, he came to learn what's up on the screen here is in terms of what are some of the issues around the traditional work comp program where it's very transactional. So you have a lot of unexplained delays, getting appointments scheduled and getting things approved. Oftentimes there's a lack of communication because it's unclear exactly who's in charge of the next step. When you have delays and miscommunication, it often leads to worker disengagement. They're not sure who's in charge, where their next appointment might be, and so they become disengaged in the process. Throughout this process, oftentimes there's a negative impact to your OSHA recordable rate, as well as your DART day rate. And so those lost days can also lead to increased individual claim costs, and all those negative things ultimately leading to an increase in your EMR, which is going to have an impact on your premium and potentially you having difficulty when you're bidding for work. So does that sort of make sense in terms of maybe what you've experienced on the work comp front? I can only see a few faces, so if you're nodding, I can't really see you. If anybody wants to affirm that, I'd love that. Or if anybody wants to challenge me, I'd love that too. So I'm gonna keep moving on. So as I mentioned, we have all of our medical staff is on staff, so we don't outsource. We don't have anybody who works one shift a month for us and works somewhere else full time. Our doctors, nurse practitioners, and PAs are on staff with us. A lot of continuity on the back end. We've got a lot of retired military, both at an executive level, but also in the field for our site medic program. We hire a lot of Navy corpsmen and Army medics in the field. And as I mentioned, Dr. Carlin's been practicing telemedicine for quite some time. And we're currently, I think that number of treating 5,000 workers in 13 states is a little out of date. but we are probably closer to 8,000 workers in about 21 states. And we are a certified veteran-owned business. Just a quick map showing the states that we currently or have done work in. We've got several, more than several projects throughout the Sun Belt doing solar fields, so remote solar field installation, but we're also on lots of traditional vertical construction as well. So we refer to this as our military model, given our strong military roots, right? So the idea is treat people immediately in the field with the highest level care possible. And so when you have either a site medic or just the standalone telemedicine, the worker is getting injured, they're having the ability to access a doctor within about 60 seconds. So now there's a doctor on the screen saying, okay, what's going on? How have you hurt yourself? And can we treat you with whatever supplies we might have on site? If the worker needs additional care, we're going to curate that journey for that injured worker by establishing and organizing maybe an orthopedic appointment or imaging such as x-rays and MRIs. Essentially what I'm saying is we're going to become accountable and we'll be the central point of contact for any stakeholder in the process, be it the injured worker, the employer, insurance adjuster, an examiner, carrier, whoever has a question about where this case is going. Oftentimes, if we need, say, an orthopedic appointment, it's going to be one of our physicians calling ahead to the orthopedic facility saying, hey, we've got an employee, work comp injury employed by so-and-so. We did an image. We see that this person probably has a surgical ankle repair, and we'd like to get him in to be seen as quickly as possible. And that doctor-to-doctor communication oftentimes eliminates delays and allows things to happen very, very quickly. And we work hard to just remove any logistical obstacle that might be out there. Might be administrative. We have a custom built medical record solution on the back end that we're utilizing. We custom designed and built this for all the processes that we need to take place in order to get that worker back to work quickly. Administrative, transportation, we can set up transportation, pharmacy deliveries, any service that is needed throughout the process, we can help manage. The worker and the supervisors of the employer, we have a portal, so risk manager or claims manager, the company can log in and say, what's going on with this injured worker. And this is a little bit different than your traditional TPA type system, which are very claim focused and focused on the dollars, what's being spent. Our system and our portal, when you log in, you're going to see when was this person last seen, what did the doctor say about the next steps, and when is the next follow-up appointment with the doctor for this injured worker. And so that's the focus for our portal to access information. And ultimately, I can't convey this as eloquently as Dr. Carlin can, but ultimately, we are trying to treat this person like family. When you treat somebody like family, ultimately, you're going to have really good outcomes. We vet every one of our providers so that there is that sort of virtual bedside manner that we need to show this injured worker that we care, the employer cares, and we want them to buy into and become engaged in their own recovery process that we're going to help them with. When they sit at home and there are unanswered questions and they feel that they're not being cared for, many times this often leads to them picking up the phone and calling somebody who will listen, which is often a plaintiff's attorney. And so we try to avoid that at all costs. And if you just treat people like family, good things happen. Let me just pause there. Any questions so far? Concerns, doubts? If not, I'll tell you a quick case study here. So Dr. Carlin saw this patient about 20 minutes after he had stepped into a hole in a field. This was on a big solar field, 3 or 4 workers carrying a large solar panel to install it. Stepped into an actual rabbit hole. A lot of these solar fields are built on old citrus groves in Florida. Stepped in the hole, didn't want to drop the panel, tried to catch it, pivoted, twisted. And so you can see the x-ray on the left there. That's his ankle about 20 minutes later. became clear to Dr. Carlin that this person needed an x-ray because it was likely fractured. You can see the x-ray with the fracture there. Dr. Carlin then made a phone call to the orthopedic in the area with whom he had already established a relationship with, texted that doctor a link to look at the x-ray. And this person was in that orthopedic's office in 2 days, scheduled for surgery the following week, and had a great recovery. And so what's interesting about this case and this employer is that they gave us all of their data. And so we went back and looked at the data, and we were able to find an almost identical injury that had happened 6 months prior to JobSiteCare being in charge of the medical on one of these projects. And so I'm going to jump to some numbers quickly. Sorry. Got ahead of myself. I don't think I have the number slide here. Anyway, sorry for that. That case study showed, and I will send this, Laura, when I send the slide deck out, I have the numbers on the side-by-side comparison. Somehow it got dropped from this slide deck. But we were able to essentially return this person to work in 3 days post-surgery of having that ankle repaired. They had a similar case where the worker missed almost 100 days after having ankle surgery, as well as some litigation costs, lots of lost time, so lots of indemnity expenses. And so we look at data that our clients give us, and we took one client's data and we looked at what was the primary driver of cost. And most people would probably think, well, the primary driver of cost is likely the severity of the injury. Seems to make sense. Not necessarily the case in work comp. We looked at about 5 years of data, and we found that the primary driver of cost was duration of the claim. So at about the 4-month mark, if that claim is still open, every month is about to get more expensive than the previous. And so we recognized an opportunity to work hard to make sure the worker got the best care quickly, but also got back to work quickly to get that claim, get them to MMI and get that claim closed. So as to try and avoid hitting that 4-month mark. So we talk a lot about engaging the worker. We also have found through our own data and working with thousands of patients that we really have about 24 hours to engage the worker in what we're trying to do, which is get them care quickly, get them a plan to recovery quickly, and get them back to the job site in any capacity. A lot of companies out there have really understood this and have bought into the idea of we'll get somebody back no matter what. So whether it's picking up trash, sorting parts, doing some safety training, all of that matters because you need to get that person back into the work environment, close to their peer group that they're used to working with every day. It's when they sit at home for days and weeks and months on end that they start to lose that engagement with that peer group, and you're less likely to ever get them to come back. So just trying to foster that trust and get that engagement going as quickly as possible. Questions? Oh, here's a slide. I had gone too far past it. I apologize. I won't focus. It's pretty self-explanatory. So here's the case under the transaction-based care. This is the care that the person received before JobSite was involved with this client. They had a 43-year-old male, pretty much the same fracture. That case, look at the numbers there, $140,000. The claim went on for 238 days, and that person missed about 100 days of work. Our patient was managed aggressively. He was back to work 3 days post-surgery. Those first couple days after surgery, usually on some pain medication. So we don't really want people coming back to the work site on heavy pain meds. But the medical costs were only $20,000. Let's just look at the expenses. There's obviously was an attorney involved on the first case, some lost time, some indemnity there as well. The claim duration or the claim length there, sometimes that's out of the employer's control. That's more of a function of the TPA and their decision on when to actually close the claim. But you can see the days lost there, as I mentioned, 98 days versus 3 days for when we were managing. So pretty compelling case. We have all this data. If anybody's interested in more data, happy to share more data or give you a reference and actually have you speak with the company where we have this case from. So, any questions on the case study? Again, just some real quick numbers. So again, another client took some data prior to JobSiteCare coming on scene and helping manage their workplace injuries. Out of 100 incidents, almost 38 of those would become a claim because the person would unnecessarily be sent off to urgent care or an emergency room. And in doing so, would ultimately end up with some sort of prescription for something even as simple as ibuprofen, which you don't really need a prescription for. You can get that over the counter. And so by aggressively managing these cases, we were able to reduce that down to about 10 out of every 100 became a claim. The costs went from about $7,000 down to about $1,000 per claim. The average days of the claim were reduced by about 40%. And then you can see the OSHA metrics drop, the recordable rate and the DART rate as well. We run a net promoter score, so we send the injured worker just 4 short questions. One of them is scored. Basically, would you recommend JobSiteCare to a coworker? And the vast majority of them say yes, this essentially affirming this has been a great experience and I would recommend this. So in the world of net promoter scores, that's a very good score. I'll send this over in the slide deck, a little bit of information to digest. It's a little bit of a busy slide. I apologize, but this is just really showing our impact on our ability to, even if something does become a claim, we are very impactful in keeping it as medical only and reducing the amount of claims that end up ultimately having an indemnity cost. And so that indemnity cost likely is lost time. So again, working aggressively to get people back to work and not let them sit at home. This was at a regression analysis I referred to at that 4-month mark. That's where we saw, we presented this data to our own clients saying, look, this is your data at 4 months. It's a red flag. You've got to watch out. If that claim's still open, it's about to get very, very expensive. So, and it gave us a good target to work toward getting these people back to work and getting that claim at least closed on our end. Might still be open on the TPA side, but again, getting that person to that point of MMI is very, very important. Again, talking about reducing the claim duration as quickly as possible and can be incredibly impactful. A little bit of the how-to. So this medical locker, how does it work? So on projects where we have a site medic, this is sort of our ER in a box. There are lots of things in there that you wouldn't find in your over-the-counter medical kit. But because you have a doctor or nurse practitioner on the other line, on a screen, they can assess and allow somebody on site to use things like something simple like a steri strip. You can avoid sending somebody to the urgent care ER if they likely would go there to get 1 or 2 stitches for a small laceration. We can actually use a steri strip in the field, clean it up, steri strip it, cover it, have that person do a follow-up appointment virtually via telemedicine, either back at the job site or at home at night or over the weekends. I think I forgot to mention we're 24/7. So either the employer or the injured worker can get hold of JobSiteCare any time of the day or night. And oftentimes that can be a large reason why you're able to keep people out of the emergency room. Somebody goes home at 3 o'clock on a Friday. Hey, I tweaked my elbow. I tweaked this finger. Now it's Saturday morning. They wake up and they feel, geez, it's not really feeling any better. What are my options? Well, at that point on a Saturday, if I can't get a hold of my employer, my options are to go to the emergency room. And then we sort of know what the process might be when they go to the emergency room. So by giving them 24/7 support, we can alleviate those sort of after hours and weekend unnecessary visits to ERs. We have been putting Narcan in all of our medical lockers. And we have used that several times on job sites. Other things that are in there, you'll find an EpiPen, steri strips, and a few other things that the normal site medic or even just in a medical kit you won't find. But again, because you've got a clinician on the other end, it becomes highly effective. This is what our clinicians see on the back end. And so when a call comes in, they're able to see where the call is coming from, which is the red pin. And then in the blue cross, the white cross and the blue background there is the closest resource so that our clinicians know, hey, yeah, we've got a place not far away for imaging, and we can get that person down there, either have somebody drive them from the job site or send an Uber, go get them, pick them up, bring them to the imaging center and get them what they need to help us figure out whether something might be fractured or if it's just a sprain and strain kind of scenario. As I mentioned, we can do on-site medic. So a traditional site medic program, you need a medic for a project for a short duration, although most of our projects tend to be large vertical projects, hotels, hospitals, data centers, those kinds of engagements. And so those tend to be longer, 2 to 3 years. So we're able to staff that as needed. And we're also able to staff, I know most of us are in the construction space here on the call, but even something like a clinic for a manufacturing facility, that's going to be a permanent installation. So warehousing and distribution, manufacturing, a lot of those facilities will have a full-time clinic on site, and we can set up, establish, and staff that as well. That's it. I'm gonna stop sharing. Questions?
No questions?
Turn my volume up, just make sure I'm not missing it.
All right. Thank you, Mike. That was a lot of information. You're going to send me the slides and I'll send out an email with the slides to everyone on the call later this week. It'll have your contact information. So if any questions come up later on, we can address them then. To wrap up, I want to thank you all for attending today. I hope the presentation has been informative. Our next session in our member benefit Zoom meeting series will be held in August and feature CCIFP certification. You'll receive details and registration information by email as we get closer to the date. Until then, feel free to reach out to the membership department if you have any questions. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.